week, we talked about Enneagram 4 as a base core, the passion to control and calibrate one's existence by comparing it to another. It summarized, that's what it is. Now, with subtypes, we have to keep in mind that subtypes are neither inferior nor superior to a core. And that's hard for a lot of people to hear because they think, well, I relate to the core but not to the subtype. If you don't relate to the specific subtype, you're not even in that core, because what Naranjo describes is a core combining with an instinct, as if they are equals, and creating something new. Now, we have a lot of people who have problems with this, which is why they go to Neo-Enneagram, because it's like, oh, the modeling's inconsistent. But point being is that the sexual instinct combines with envy and creates the sexual 4, or the self-preservation instinct combines with the core of the Enneagram 1 and creates worry or concern, which is the name of the subtype. With Enneagram 4, you're going to see a huge variation in how envy can be expressed. But keep in mind that it is all the same motivation, the passion to control and calibrate their existence by comparing it to another, which is a huge deal. So this right here is actually a document by someone named Celestial, really smart guy, but he put together a good summation, which we can start off with. Tenacity. So we have to look here to understand that Enneagram 4 has a false deficiency, seeing the glass as half empty instead of half full, which arises from early frustrations, and it talks about how they manifest. Social envy laments other people's greener lawns and is linked to sadness. Sexual envy is competitive and arrogant. However, conservation envy adopts a counter envy, which is marked by autonomy and a rejection of dependence. I would like to point out, counter types do not act against the passion or fixation of the core type. All a counter type is something which does not appear to embody the type. So, the self-preservation 4 does not appear envious. They appear hardworking, tenacious, never complaining. But the real question is, why are they hardworking? Why are they so tenacious? It's because they're envious. They feel like they're not enough on the inside, so they work hard, they keep their complaints shut down, and they do not express envy, and yet they are envious. So, I'm going to actually start us off with the counter type. The self-preservation 4 is characterized by being in a constant state of suffering, despite what the outside shows. This is a person who does not complain or cry in front of others, and who has learned to swallow a lot and endure pain without blinking. These are people who adopt a stoic outlook on life, but they actually enjoy suffering and experiencing intensely negative feelings. They adopt an introjection of greed, resulting in wanting to suffer more and more, because they have accepted that they will not stop to suffer, embracing it fully. Envy manifests in the self-preservation 4 through directing it against the person themselves, resulting in a great amount of self-demands. This is why, actually, a lot of self-preservation 4s can be taken as Enneagram 1s or even Enneagram 3s because of their high self-demand and their tendency to work very hard to acquire what they envy. However, self-preservation 4 is the only Enneagram 4 that does this. The sexual 4 does not attempt to gain what they demand of themselves. They attempt to cut down others who look bigger than them. The sexual 4 is characterized by turning against shame, becoming shameless in order to satisfy its intense desires. These are people who get easily frustrated, preferring to express their anger verbally. Their competitive attitude manifests through despising that which is desired. Envy manifests through the devaluation of what is enviable. These types of people want everything with a burning sense of anger. So, for those in the chat, Gloria, are you still here? Gloria, I would like to point out that a couple months, I think it was like about a month and a half ago, we actually typed our beloved, hateable EIE CSJ as a sexual 4. It's quite interesting. Becoming shameless, no wonder the SX4 CSJ calls it FI Trickster. Spot on. Spot on. It's not even that he's not aware of his own values, is that he became shameless. 100%, yeah, spot on. And so this is why the character of the sexual four is going to appear shameless, he's going to appear aggressive, while internally he's a very bifurcated and hard to understand individual. In my opinion, all fours are hard to understand, but that's because I don't deal with what they deal with. And thank God for that. I have my own problems. We go on to the social four, which is called blame. Well, that is their passion. The social four is characterized by being very tearful and feeling like a victim. They complain a lot and they are given to self-sabotage. These people are so given to self-blame and to comparing themselves unfavorably with others because they redirect their rage onto themselves. This is how they are different from the sexual four in a major, major way. Sexual four turns their rage and their discontent outward, and the social four turns it inward. There is an inherent need to endure pain oneself, instead of projecting it onto others. Envy manifests by complaining about the perceived unfairness of life. These people are unreliable and childish, resulting in irrational beliefs or behaviors. And so you can see, with the passion of blame from the social four, competitiveness from the sexual four, and tenacity from the self-preservation four, that they are all quite different in their expression. They're not different in their motivation. Not even a bit. The code is EIE. Yes, Uncle Gay. Thank you. That name is actually fantastic. I love it. All right, we're going to go down here because there's something interesting. By the way, guys, if you want to read about this on your own time, Control C, Control V. We're going to go ahead and put that in the chat. This is one of my peers. He's done a lot of writing on this. His name is Celestial Worthy. He's actually on this server. I think you could ping him. He might be annoyed if you do, though. But he has written and compiled libraries of information, which we are drawing from at the moment. I decided to download a couple of them, but I'm going to put his link tree in the chat right there so you guys can access it whenever you want. All right, we are going to go ahead and turn over here, try to go a little bit more in depth. It's transformation, immature personality. You know what we can do? Hold on. Let's go over to this handy thing. Get it done nice and quick. E4 self-preservation. SP4 has a self-demand and a perfectionism, which is why they can be mistyped as Enneagram 1, even Enneagram 3. Closely related to tenacity lives self-demandingness, a self-revolutionary orality that pours on itself the tacit demand. It feeds on tenacity since it demands more and more, raising the bar and what is at stake requires. On the other hand, having the resources to sustain this task. Here's a little quote. Nothing is enough for me. A task that I tackle and that I finish always leaves me with a point of dissatisfaction. Like I have to be aware and say, okay, that's fine, that's enough. They're workaholics. SP4 is the workaholic subtype. I dare say even more than SP3. There's a great deal of empathy in the self-preservation 4, and in all honesty, there's a lot of empathy in the core type of the 4. It gets reduced greatly with the sexual instinct, but it's deeply present in self-preservation. SP4 has a great sensitivity and observation capacity that lets them capture and understand the characteristics of those who are in front of them. Good listeners, they easily empathize with the suffering of others and are able to contain and accompany, either because they see parts of themselves in others or because, knowing internal states of deep suffering, they have developed self-support resources. The SP4 is a character capable of silence, of enduring the emptiness of the other, and of transmitting a deep understanding devoid of judgment. In suffering, he feels a bond, as he usually does with his original affections. This is why recently I have been thinking that our dear friend Wick on the server is not actually an SP3, but is instead an SP4. I'm going to talk to him after this lecture, and we're going to find out the truth. I think somebody pinged me. I'd say the core is the most helpful. Find the difference between 4s and 3s versus 1s. 1s are in the head triad. They would be in the gut. 4s and 3s are both in the heart triad. 4s are both reactive and withdrawn. 4s can be in insanely reactive, yes. Yeah, gut. Gut triad is, ooh, they're very reactionary. The 9 a bit less so. Cringe, I agree. Being an EIE is cringe. Unless you're Moderno, and unless there's like one other EIE that I like at my work. His name is Bob. I used to hate him, but he cares about me doing a good job. I think he's a social one. Anyways, tangent. Difficulty accepting limits with the SP4. Another aspect related to the above is the difficulty of accepting internal and external limits. I think this is something that can also be inferred by looking at the quote that we saw earlier, which says that nothing is enough for me. And they can't stop working because they just kind of feel crushed in general. And they need to keep going, keep going, keep going. And it ties into their masochistic attitude, their sense of refinement, the desire to be a caregiver of others. And if some of you have attended our Enneagram 3 lecture earlier, you would note that not the self-punishing, but the hard-working attitude, the high amounts of empathy for the other, the desire to help, being a caregiver, it makes SP4 sometimes look like SP3. Again, why I'm thinking of changing Wick's type. For the SP4, the attitude of earning merit through work leaves little room for fun and pleasure. Dimensions with which this character is unfamiliar. Again, this is why they can be mistyped as Enneagram 1 or even Enneagram 3. Pleasure is felt by always finding satisfaction in doing, hey, just like the 3, but directed towards something, a goal, or someone. It is difficult to be aware of what increases the happiness of one without including the other. In fact, this character is not clear about what makes him feel good. Contact with nature, silence, being with oneself, listening to music, dedicating time to oneself are the possibilities that one sometimes allow oneself and that are closest to an idea of pleasure, as well as, on the other hand, the pleasure of an endless movement of spontaneity and freedom of action and speech is hindered. So this is not a free character. The SP4 is quite stoic. Going on and on, we don't really need to go through all of this because it's pretty easy to understand the SP4 as someone who is dry in self-tenderness and has difficulty expressing it. A character who is quite rigid, who hoards. A brave character who does not shy from challenges. This is a workaholic, self-demanding character who is never satisfied with what he acquires. And we may look at the SP4's hard work and we may praise it, call it virtuous. But remember that it stems from a horrible neuroses, which is rooted in a lie. The lie being, I am not enough, I do not have enough, and so I must acquire. The SP4, amongst all of the Ennea types, is the character that knows peace and satisfaction the least. Now, let's go on to the sexual 4. The sexual 4 is a devaluer. Oh, I can already see where this is going. Devaluation is present in the repertoire of defense mechanisms of this type. The difference in the sexual 4 is that it tends towards projection, to devalue the other, and to openly blame him for his shortcomings and defects. I'm going to copy-paste this for you guys. Have fun with that. Listening to Blackstone live in the middle of an anime con. Yes, bring them all in here. Jinx from Arcane is an SX4. I have problems with that, but it is a common typing for her. On the other hand, SX4 has no problem admitting his guilt dramatically when he feels that all is lost. The fault can even be of life or of God himself, and it can be a form of manipulation. That is to say, there is great mobility between the extremes that go from, I'm not guilty of anything, to the terror of, I am guilty of everything. Very dramatic character. SX4 of the 3 subtypes is the one who projects the most. And in this aspect, it can easily reach cruelty, above all displaying a great capacity for verbal aggression, as we have already pointed out. SX4s have a phobia of feeling how little they value themselves, and also of feeling guilty. He tends to blame the other, compulsively needing to find someone responsible for the feelings that he does not want to accept for himself. This is a dissatisfied character, additionally being transgressive and intolerant of limits. I think you'll notice that it is a slight comparison between SP4 and SX4, that they are both intolerant of limits, where the SX4 finds that he is not tolerant of limits between himself and another person or an object, whereas the SP4 is not tolerant with limits placed on himself, which kind of goes in line with my understanding of the instincts, which is that SP4 can be conceptualized as a ball of energy inside the individual. The social instinct can be conceptualized as an aura surrounding the individual, catching all the people in the aura. And the sexual instinct can be conceptualized as a straight line between person and object. And so the intolerance of limits has to do with connection between the individual and his object. Whereas in the SP4, it's intolerant of limits like, hey, you need to stop working. SP4, no, I don't want to stop working. I have to create my utopia. That's what they're all about. Again, they can get mistyped for E1. Here's something I thought was interesting the other night. What is observed in this way of functioning is the difficulty and little capacity to assume responsibilities in the affairs of life. This is the SX4. As we have seen, the sexual 4 tirelessly dedicates itself to making something or someone take care of those aspects that they do not feel capable of sustaining or developing by themselves, with a feeling of their own right that is difficult to reasonably question. Only with introspection work do they come into contact with what it means to take responsibility for one's own life. This is a huge contrast between the sexual 4 and the self-preservation 4, where the self-preservation 4 takes too much responsibility for their own life, puts too much work in, and the sexual 4 does no such thing. Again, the sexual instinct representing a line from self to object, self-preservation instinct resembling an orb inside the individual. Skywalker Stone is mistyped as mistyped as mistyped as E1. Come on. Don't change my type, Beckett, please. So we find this character who is blaming of others, who is irresponsible, who devalues external objects, who is dissatisfied. I want to take a look at this. The SX4 is a dissatisfied character. Everything previously developed is basically based on dissatisfaction and the way of relating to it. Although this topic will be illustrated in the section on love, we would like to underline in a sympathetic way the Gata Flora style. Quote, if they put it in, she screams, and if they take it out, she cries. That this subtype boasts, and that shows its almost dissatisfaction permanent in all areas. The SX4 is a permanently dissatisfied character. You give them what they want, they're upset, you take it away, they cry even harder. If they don't hit him, he screams. If they hit him, he doesn't know what to do with it, and most likely despises it. Dissatisfaction is associated with the belief that nothing and no one is enough, and the experience of a bottomless void. Beckett, you were right to type my sister a sexual 4. It is something else. This is why I don't have a clear Naranjo type. I only relate to SX8 and SX1. His name is Billion Trust? Okay, thank you. I do, but thank you. I have a feeling we'll get along, Moon. It's gonna be great. Alright. So, we understand it as a transgressive character. Transgression of limits is developed on many occasions at the level of fantasy, before an audience or an imaginary other. It is not so important to break the limit itself, but how this is seen by others. So we have to remember that this is an image type. This is why I disagree with Ibrahim when he says that SX4 is basically an Enneagram 8. I'm like, no, the sexual 4 is still deeply invested in the evaluation of others and how image works. There is a pleasure in causing some kind of stir among the spectators. Oh yeah, that's my sister. As if from that place one could obtain a great adhesion or a great rejection. But in short, something intense to enjoy and talk about. The SX4 is not very reserved, but he feels special pleasure for telling his experiences in a compulsive and shameless way. His position is, if I don't tell it, it's as if it hadn't happened to me. And if he feels that this provokes his audience, all the better. Actually, his goal, more than sharing, is to impress and feel superior, even when what he says demeans him. So they'll go on and they'll brag and talk about how, oh, this thing happened to me, and you'll be shocked. You'll be so shocked and surprised that this horrible thing happened to them. But that's what they want. They want you to go, oh, how could this happen to you? What? You let that happen? Are you an idiot? And they'll be like, yeah, you're so shocked and impressed by how bad I am. They love to do that. Goodness, I can't even judge because I've got my own problems. When they do not obtain with their manipulations, they can undertake a change and a path inward, taking responsibility, recognizing the lack as such, and the drama. In this way, begin to transit creative solitude, inner strength, and finally responsibility for your thoughts, feelings, and actions. That never happens. It's a histrionic character, again, very opposed to the self-preservation for. A selfish character who's always finding justification for his great suffering, difficulty, or lack of possibilities. It is easy for him to be a person who is not very available to the needs of the other. He uses his suffering to not carry out tasks. I can't do it, it's so hard. Or to delegate things to others that he does not like or that require effort. Here's an important quote. Egoism is also in the conviction that the suffering of the other is never as important as one's own. A great difference between SX4 and SP4, by the way. Deviolent character, which you can kind of gather from the fact that they are histrionic and transgressive, you can kind of just understand that a constantly dissatisfied character who is irresponsible and transgressive would also be very violent. Violence occurs in a special way when you do not support frustration or fear when you feel that you are losing control of the other. Oh, that makes a lot of sense of things, and I would actually like to talk about that a bit later. Not today, but that's a subject I've been thinking about a lot. This is an extravagant character who's not afraid of originality and often enjoy feeling different. Again, image type, not like in Enneagram 8. He loves to be special, unique, and original, and he succeeds. You can speak very explicitly without conforming to good manners, as well as dress flashily and against the grain. I actually love that phrase, against the grain. His desire to be peculiar makes him also brave and adventurous, minimizing risks and dangers. An inconstant character who is jealous, who's overpowered. You can understand where we're going with this. This is a very easy to understand character. You get like 3 descriptions in, and it's very easy to kind of just say, okay, they're going to be like, yep, there it is, there it is, there it is. Highly vain, sarcastic, and at their best, this is very true of my sister, who's actually on this server, cheerful and chatty, usually very happy people, especially in moments of euphoria within their manic depressive peaks. Just as when they are down, they are the most dramatic in the Enneagram. When they are on top, they become the funniest, sharpest, most capable of laughing at themselves and their misfortunes. Quaint as they come, they can be talkative and very talkative in their attempts to focus the audience's attention on them. If they find the paid field, there's no one to stop them. And they even tire the audience, of course. So, when they're bad, they're very, very bad, and when they're good, they're amazing. Seductive characters, sensitive and artistic. So, on your own time, if you want deep, because I'm not going to waste everyone's time, anyone who wants to know, I have already pasted this Google Doc in the chat, and you can become deeply acquainted with it. But you can understand that they can swing from this emotionally labile, transgressive, histrionic, egotistical, violent character, and then when they're in a better spot, a more satisfactory spot, they're cheerful, they're seductive, highly sensitive characters, and they're actually, I would like to point this out, intellectuals. Heart triad being intellectual, who would have thought? Among the E4 subtypes, the sexual is sometimes highly intellectualized. It's funny, they're actually more intellectual than the socials type, which we'll look at in a second. This is revealed in his aspirations, his inclination to knowledge, to study, to research the most varied subjects, but above all, humanistic and philosophical. They love to read and be informed, and in many cases they are strongly involved in social or political commitment. In his stubborn non-conformism, passion for criticism, rebellion against the system, they define him as a revolutionary, although the ideals of justice for which he fights may be based on a very personalized perception of reality that refers to his need to compensate for his feeling of injustice. Let's go ahead and take a look at the final subtype. Enneagram 4 social. Do we have any questions about the subtypes thus far? Gays don't. Shut up, Beckett. I'm actually more intellectual than SO type. No, I didn't say that SX types are more intellectual than SO types. I mean to say that the sexual 4 specifically is more intellectual than the social 4. If you take a look at like social 6, that's like the most intellectual. You take a look at the socialite, it's the most intellectual. Isn't he reading Naranjo? Yes. Yeah, just reading Naranjo and expanding on it, essentially. Do all subtypes of E4 strive for uniqueness? The strive for uniqueness is more characterized in Neo-Enneagram, but I would say yes. Auj is intellectual. She is a deeply intellectual character. It would be Naranjo that is wrong according to you. So I'm not saying that all sexual types are more intellectual. It's just that in this specific instance, the sexual 4, I find, has more intellectual capacity and inclination than the social, which is both in my experience and from my readings.
By Blackstone, I have a question.
Yes.
Regarding this hardworking stuff you said about SP4, I believe. What makes them more hardworking than other types?
Did you say SP4?
Yes, you mentioned about SP4 being as hardworking as an Enneagram 1 and Enneagram 3.
Yes. So this is a combination of many factors. The self-preservation 4, let's go step by step. SP, and Beckett just posted something in the chat about that. The self-preservation instinct I have conceptualized as a bubble, a neuroses bubble, which exists inside the self. So it is not something really dependent on external factors as much as it would be with the sexual, which is a straight line, or the social, which is an aura or a circle. Neuroses bubble, exactly. So self-preservation 4 has an inner directedness because of self-preservation, which is fueled by envy, or the pervasive and constant sense of dissatisfaction inside themselves. Yes, Roxas, social is an aura. So the self-preservation instinct combining with that permanent sense of dissatisfaction is going to create this perpetual drive which pushes them towards attaining what they desire. But as you saw from the quote, which is in E4 self-preservation, quote, "Nothing is enough for me. A task that I tackle and that I finish always leaves me with a point of dissatisfaction. Like I have to be aware and say, okay, that's fine, that's enough." The reason I say that self-preservation 4 is the most hardworking is that because unlike the Enneagram 3 self-preservation, the self-preservation 4 cannot be satisfied, even if they were to attain validation from the other person. Their inner sense of dissatisfaction is simply too strong.
So it's like I'm so broken, I have to fix it. I have to do whatever it takes to get from that brokenness. Is that how they see themselves? Like fixing the brokenness inside of them. Like they will never get satisfied until that brokenness is fixed and healed. That's why they work so hard.
Yes, it is. In my opinion, it's like it is it is insane. And I think, yeah, Beckett puts up a good point here that SP4 is on the same level of hardworkiness as the SP1. You could put up the argument that they're even more hardworking, but SP1 busts their own ass pretty hard, so it's definitely a spot of contention. It depends on the level of neuroses of the individual. An SP1 might be more hardworking than an individual SP4, but on the whole, SP4, SP1, SP3, these are the most hardworking of the types. Like, bar none. It is absurd.
SP types in general are more hardworking than other subtypes. Like
For sure.
down to earth, more grounded, practical, and it makes them more like hardworking.
It does. And
what we see as hardworking.
In our modern, especially over here in the West, there is an overvaluation of productivity and mechanism such that the neuroses of the SP4, SP1, SP3 is seen as virtuous, which is a really great disservice to these individuals who suffer and struggle with this on the daily. they have to deal with this horrible neuroses while everyone around them praises them for their neuroses. This is something that I want to do away with. It is not the correct way of viewing neuroses. The SP4 is not virtuous. They are controlled by a lie. And that's why we study the Enneagram, in order to recognize, here's the lie that I tell myself, I'm going to get rid of it. I kind of feel called out. Good! That's good. I was called out when Beckett called me a social one, and he roasted my ass about it. But but now I'm working towards it. I'm realizing that I'm like a constantly dissatisfied perfectionist who believes he's better than everyone, and it's totally untrue. It was E1, you memoryless idiot. Close enough. But point is, you're supposed to feel called out. Congrats.
Yeah, that's the point. But anyway, it's good.
All right, let's move on to the social, because that entire tangent that I just went on is going to be hopefully edited out in the YouTube. Maybe it won't. We'll see. The E4 social is imaginative and creative. So I find that the self-hating types are the most like this. Like, because you need to be screwed up in order to be imaginative. The emotional, sensitive, and introspective aspect allows you to more easily access your creative and imaginative side. From an early age, he likes to console himself and entertain himself in fantastic and dreamlike worlds in which his imagination allows him to compensate for the great inhibition that he feels in real life. Sensible. I hope this doesn't mean what I think it means. Low self-esteem and the need to defend yourself from others lead you to reject criticisms or behaviors that challenge you. Their gaze perpetually directed to the outside world. Remember, it's social, it's like an aura around you. And the continuous comparison that he makes with himself lead him to give a subjective reading and interpretation of what happens. The slightest criticism annihilates him. He feels that he has given a lot, more than the others. He finds himself again without recognition. In addition, since it is difficult for him to express his opinion directly for fear of being hurt or conflicted, he expects the same from others. So, this is a character who's very understanding. Again, Enneagram 4s in general are like this. Understanding and empathetic, because they suffer so deeply on the inside. They're very in contact with their inner sense of lack. And so when they notice other people in a sense of lack, they can be deeply empathetic. Enneagram 4s at their best, when they're kind of getting past the bad parts of their neuroses and leaning into what makes them special and actually useful, unique, decent people who everyone appreciates, they can be deeply empathetic. And I've seen my sister. She's one of the most empathetic people I've ever met. Especially, it's insane. I could never be that empathetic. But yes, this internal sense of suffering allows them to empathize with others deeply, because when you're in a horrible scenario, you can more easily bond with others who are also having a hard time. And the E4 is constantly having a hard time. Since it is difficult for him to express his...
trauma bonding, the empathy that you're saying, like it's trauma bonding. Like, hey, Blackstone, you have been through this so much suffering. I understand this suffering. Is that kind of like empathy that they do? Enneagram 4.
I think we have Audrey in the chat, and she does mention that, yeah, that, and I agree with her, that definitely can be the case. I would hazard to say that it can often be the case. Trauma bonding is still under empathy, yeah.
They're willing to go deep. Like, if you say that I have a dark history, like very shameful stuff too, that I don't want to share, like they're gonna say, like, bring it all on. I can take it.
Especially in the self-preservation 4, yes. And they will be highly, yes, you would be right, they're highly empathetic people. I ask a lot of questions and I want to understand. That's one of the cores of empathy. You genuinely want to understand, or you have an attraction towards it. And it is about, I can take it, I want to be known, therefore I want to know. So this is what I talk about. This is what I mean when I say that we give to others what we desire them to give to us. Like when my father is constantly like, can I cook you something? Can I get you something? He constantly wants to do acts of service related to food with me. And so I experimented with this and I started doing that for him, and he was overjoyed. Because at the end of the day, we are unconsciously believing and imagining, oh, the other person wants from me what I want from everyone else. And so is Brother Mark, is Brother Mark E4? He could be self-preservation 4, but I have him at social 6 right now. Again, I'm going to go talk to him a little bit and try to go in depth. I'm always changing my mind. Why are me and Brother Mark the same person? Maybe. E2 is sympathy, not empathy. Yes. Oh my goodness. But back to what I was saying. I don't even remember what I was saying, so I'm going to get back to the type. For this character, the social 4, life is hard, difficult, and sad, but it is characterized by a romantic feeling inside. Thanks to his romanticism, the world becomes lighter and more bearable. It is as if he added a note or a touch of color to so much pain. The romantic vision that he harbors within him is expressed in the world of poetry, music, and the search for positive living situations and opportunities. It is as if he did not resign himself to this harsh reality through his romantic aspect. It is as if, through romance, he sweetened a bitter pill. Now, the great difference between the social 4, sexual 4, and self-preservation 4 is that the self-preservation 4 is very much actively non-aggressive because of their desire to kind of keep their envy to themselves. The sexual 4 is active-aggressive. The social 4 is passive-aggressive. He is not allowed to express anger. He always represses hatred. Showing hatred for his mother or father would be tantamount to losing her, something no child could afford. So he learned to repress his hatred and swallow it. He began to hate himself, believing himself defective, unworthy of love, guilty of not being loved, in order to save his mother. The parental anger you experienced in childhood is too destructive and stressing. So this character, although originally blaming the mother or having hatred towards her, believes that this hatred is going to be destructive, so they swallow it and reverse the dynamic. So instead, actually, I'm the hateable one, actually, I'm terrible, actually, I'm so awful. And so his aggression ends up being expressed in an incredibly passive way, as opposed to the sexual 4, which is very direct and loud in its hatred, and the self-preservation 4, who essentially doesn't express it whatsoever. It's the counter type. You're not going to think that they're envious on a first meeting. Due to the fact that they're constantly swallowing inward, pointing things towards themselves, they end up being introspective characters. In isolation, in which he takes refuge as a child and in which he grows up, it somehow leads him to spend a lot of time in contact with himself, listening to and analyzing himself, doing with himself what no one did when he was a child. Pain and contact with suffering continually stimulate him to study himself and to investigate his inner dynamics. He longs to get out of his suffering and has to continually face it, but he does not believe that this can be done by acting or making decisions in his own life. This is not a gut type. Instead, he prefers an interior movement of study and analysis of how he is and what he feels and why. Tell me why. So, this character, turning inward, being passive-aggressive, being romantic, imaginative, very inward character who tends to be reserved, extremely private, only talks about himself and his intimate experiences with very few, as he does not trust others to understand him. Since childhood, he has experienced not being understood, not being seen, having the feeling that no one is aware of his needs, and therefore, as an adult, he has no faith that there is someone who can understand him deeply. There's a lot of projection in this character. Oh, I'm empathetic to you because I'm suffering. Oh, I don't even understand myself, so how could you understand me? Oh, I'm such a horrible person. There's a lot of projection in this character. Due to, again, inward focus, everything that we've mentioned previously. It's a feminine character. There's no trace of aggressiveness or attack in him, but of sweetness and tenderness. Very, very different from sexual 4. A gentle character who is comprehensive, lazy, and a procrastinator. I'd like to go over this. You are I hate this word, recalcitrant about committing. I'm going to say that means resistant, about committing and lazy about getting a task done. Social 4 tends to postpone his execution because he always feels that he is not up to the task, and very often he believes that he is incapable or that he does not do it to the best of his ability. Fear of failure paralyzes him, which is related to low self-esteem and lack of confidence in one's own abilities. So I would like to note that I personally think this is due to how inwardly focused you are. The more aware of self you are, the less confident you're going to be. This is why the sexual 4 appears to be the most confident of the Enneagram 4s, because they're constantly focused on that one-to-one straight line bond from themselves to an object. And so this is why the types at the top of the Enneagram, 8, 9, and 1, are going to appear the most self-satisfied because they're not in contact with their inner experience. And, their journey is essentially to come into contact with it. But because Enneagram 4, especially the social 4, is so deeply inward, they are going to be in contact with the lack that every human has, some internal lack. The social 4 is the most aware of it. And so because of this, they're going to be an extremely dissatisfied character, which leads to criticism and self-disqualification, sadness. But then we go over here. A little bit of a seeming contradiction, but let's look at it. They are a proud character. He reacts superbly to an offense and a wound in the sense that in order to defend himself, he creates a distance with the other, or he even leaves, separates, becomes cold and distant. He does not back down. He resists his suffering without showing it and confuses pride with strength. He has the illusion that through pride he can protect himself. It re-triggers the wound in the same way that it hurts the most. Interesting. Shyness. We're going to go over just one or two more, and then I'm going to wrap it up. They like to be social, and they need others, but tend to hide and find it difficult to expose themselves. Especially in a new or wider social context, shyness is due to an excessive concern for the judgment of others. Again, social subtype. The perception of being inferior to others and a feeling of inadequacy. From a very young age, he experiences the weight of being judged, often being asked to be different than he was, or to better fit the context. You develop an excessive tendency to focus on your inner world of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Again, it's this inward focus which causes shyness, pessimism, insecurity. Funny how those two are correlated. When is E2 YouTube coming out? We honestly might redo that, make things a little easier for everyone to understand. I'm being called out. Moon, are you being called out right now? Do we have an Enneagram 4 in our midst? What 4 suffers from inferior? Yeah, all of them. It's just that the sexual 4 does not appear to feel inferior often because feeling inferior kind of cuts down the idea of competition that they have. Yep, SP4 utilizes it and works to remedy it. SO4, oh, I'm such a victim. SX4, nuh-uh. All of us. Odd, out of what we've been reading so far, what would you put yourself towards? SX4? Okay, Beckett was right. Somebody go ahead and put that up on the counter. Beckett was right, number 1458. Later, I can send my brief analysis on my E4 character self-defense mechanism, me projecting to... Yes, please do that. Will you do E5 and E7 analysis in the future? I will, actually. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to wrap this up because I want to do better than last time, so I have about 4 minutes. Complain and claim. He complains about small things. He is impatient, need to continually express and externalize dissatisfaction. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm bored. Through the complaint, he seeks attention and confirmation that another is available and sees him. This is envy combining with the social instinct. And again, it's like Beckett said in a very good and surmised way. SP4 utilizes their inferiority complex to work harder and to gain what they desire. Social 4 says, yep, I'm terrible, I'm awful, and I'm going to loudly let everyone know about it. SX4 says, no, I'm actually the best. But they do suffer with a lot of internal inferiority. E5. You know what, I've got a little prank that I want to pull on the Enneagram 5 people. Just embrace the avarice and take 5 minutes to do each video. A little bit of a meta joke there. Anyways, so we understand the hypersensitive, hold on. Yeah, hypersensitive character, jealous character, empathetic. We've already talked about how they embrace sadness and suffering. They embrace their own envy. This is in general, again, you can infer a lot from the first couple of characteristics. Do we have any questions about the subtype, something that I might have missed? I did the whole I'm horrible, but it's because I think I should be able to do everything. Real. Oh my goodness. All right. I think that's going to wrap it. Yeah, I was going to say, from Mr. Moderno, do we have any questions?
You can answer. You have already touched on the empathy stuff, but what else do each subtype bring to the world? What other positive things? It can
Positive
be
things.
artistic
So
stuff.
let's go ahead and take a look. E4 social, very quickly, a good thing that they can bring to the world, because there's like positive effects to your neuroses, obviously, is that they bring altruism. Their hypersensitivity, when it's toned down, can understandably turn into regular sensitivity. So they're, and again, it says right here that he has a great ability to put himself in another's place to live his emotional experience. It's an altruistic character. He feels that he is in danger of losing something, perhaps of losing the other person or being abandoned. And although this motivation itself is neurotic, the altruism and the helpfulness that it brings forth can allow them to, especially when they lean into it, to be extremely helpful to the world. Because the social four is so in contact with their inner experience and how horrible things are, they have the potential to be the most empathic, in my opinion, of all the types. The most empathic. So they can bring empathy and understanding in their human connections, which is something we need in the human race and are sorely lacking. So social fours actually have the potential to do them, in my opinion, in this day and age, in this place and this time, to do the most for humanity. The sexual four, after they get past their dissatisfaction, their transgression, etc., their vanity, they can be a cheerful and chatty character. Audrey, you're probably going to relate to this. This is how everyone in the family sees you. They're usually very happy people in the moments of euphoria within their manic depressive peaks. When they come, just as when they are down, they are the most dramatic in the Enneagram. When they are on top, they are the funniest, the sharpest, the most capable of laughing at themselves and their misfortunes. Quaint as they come, they can be talkative, very talkative, in their attempt to focus the audience's attention on them. If they find the paid field, there is no one that can stop them, and they even tire their audience. Cheerful character, a seductive character. This is why you make friends so easily. So the sexual four is someone that, when they're out of their neuroses and they're embracing the better side of themselves, they can be leaders. They can draw whole crowds of people to them because of their high energy and even the denial of their own internal envy. Their seduction, again, E4 has high sensitivity towards others. Their intellectual bent. All of this can make them positively magnetic characters. Sexual fours, when they're leaning into their best side, are magnetic people. So the social four is empathetic. The sexual is magnetic. Self-preservation, as we can see, is the most hard-working, I think, right up there with self-preservation 1 and self-preservation 3. It's interesting how I didn't really call out any of the schizoid types, 5, 6, and 7, as being especially hardworking. I think that's pretty funny.
Yes, thank you, Blackstone. I got my answer there. I have another question, if you don't mind. We know that the 2, 3, and 4s are image types. We already know that, okay, Enneagram 2, they want to portray the image of, like, I'm God's gift to humanity or some kind of thing. And the Enneagram 3 is more like, I'm the most successful, achievable, and stuff like that. But how about Enneagram 4? Is it more like, I'm so unique, I'm so special, I'm so. Because we call them the individualist. So, what kind of image are they trying to portray to the world? Is my question.
So, the image that obviously the 2 has is of self-exaggeration and attempting to have others to confirm that. The 3 says, what is it that you desire, and I'm going to become that. And the E4 is in a battle with self, that they want others to have the audience, that like they want an audience towards their battle. What he say? E4 wants to portray an image of the sufferer who overcame suffering honestly. Yeah, precisely that. And he's right, it's not an inherently positive image. We look at the Enneagram 2, which wants a positive image. We have the Enneagram 3, who desires positive attention always and always and always. But the Enneagram 4 is not necessarily trying to portray a positive or a negative image, but more so of a warrior. This is the warrior archetype who won it all, who beat everybody. It's precisely that, actually, what Beckett just said.
Basically, the underdog. They have like this kind of underdog mentality.
Yeah,
I
they
used to suck, yeah.
much of the time it will be an underdog or someone who starts off from a disadvantageous position and who climbs the ladder. But that's Enneagram 4 for you.